For some reason, I thought you would have like a bunch of like GameCube standees in the background, but you've got like the
I'm
one
blocking them.
shelf.
It's an entire, almost an entire shelf. And I'll slide out of the way if you want to like mention that too. You can even make that joke.
GameCube Galaxy, or is there something else we can call you by, or just GCG? I still can't get used to saying that.
So you could call me GCG, or you could call me by my name, Marcello.
Oh, it's Marcello?
Yes.
I'm guessing that's Italian, or am
Uh,
I getting that wrong?
no, that's correct. It's
Okay,
Italian.
but it's good to have you on, and I know that, like, from everybody that we've interviewed, they've always brought up your name. How awesome is that to be able to get recognized by other content creators, some of them that actually have, like, more subs than you do?
Honestly, it's beyond humbling. Seeing the community that has been growing within the GCG nation, as I like to call it, it really, it's been touching. It's been, like I said, humbling is the word I keep looking at because
Hmm.
I'm so thrilled to see the amount of people that are not only just enjoying the content, they're reliving some of their nostalgia. They're learning about the GameCube and hearing that numerous other content creators have been giving me shout outs or trying to get my channel out there to other people to check out really does mean more to me than they really know.
All right. Well, since you mentioned about some of the creators and being, recognized for your work, when you went to SE or Southeast Game Exchange, excuse me, when you went there for the first time as a guest, what was your expectations going into the convention? Because I know that in your video you mentioned that you only been to comic book conventions. So, what made this your first video game convention to go to?
A lot of the times I have a hard time coming across retro gaming conventions. I live down in the great state of Florida, and there are a few cons here that I just became aware of more recently. But in the past, I always went to the comic conventions that covered a variety of toys and games as well. I had a previous website, and that later turned into a channel called Gamers Extreme. And I used to go to New York Comic Con for that site as press. And then covering stuff there as well as checking out the retro game booths there. There was always just a few booths. There's never anything it's like too substantial at that convention in terms of retro gaming.
Hmm.
And then recently going to MegaCon down in Orlando, same thing, very similar to New York Comic Con in terms of just a lot of vendors, but more comic based and toy based. And then there's a few of those retro game ones. So going to the Southeast Game Exchange, I remember Matt Retrowolf88 was telling me last year, and he said, "Listen, you have to go to this convention. It is such an amazing convention. There's so many great vendors. There's so many great content creators getting to hang out." So I was very fortunate to be able to go there for a day this year, just a few weeks ago. I was completely floored with the amount of retro gaming goodness that was there. I clearly did not bring enough money for that convention. It was just awesome being able to go meet up with all these other content creators. Finally, getting to meet Matt in person, aka Retrowolf88, and then Eric and Jared over at Retro Gaming Pandemic. Getting to meet Metal Jesus Rocks and John Riggs and all these other awesome content creators, and just how humble they are as well. It really was an experience that was second to none for me for a convention.
Oh, definitely. And that's the other thing that you mentioned about, because we had John Riggs on the show before, and I know that we mentioned about that with like some of the other recordings, but it's just like how you said before that it is very humbling whenever you get to meet these people in person. And there's that whole group that usually is against a lot of the popular content creators. Do you think that's a bit overblown, or do people just need to, like, not have to ask too many questions about who they are as a person?
I think it depends. I mean, every person is different, right? So some people might let that ego get to them, and then there are those who are genuine behind their content. It's not just who they are in front of the camera, it's who they are behind the camera as well. And the biggest thing is something that my oldest brother had taught me back in the day was always to treat others the way you always want to be treated, because at the end of the day, people will remember that. and they'll keep coming back to you, whether it's for a friendship's sake or someone to talk to. It stands out.
Oh, definitely.
So that being said, like everyone that I did meet at Siege really was just amazing, to say the least. And it, like I said, you look at someone like Metal Jesus Rocks, who's got almost 900,000 subscribers, and he had like we had no problem chatting, getting to know each other. I helped him film some of the footage for his Siege video, and he was very, very gracious to give me a shout out in his video because of that. And you look at someone who's got such a huge following that was so gracious to give me a shout out, and someone who's nowhere near that kind of following. And I think that's extremely telling of the person you are. You're some that shows that someone who really does care about the community in general.
Oh, definitely. And on the topic of some of the content creators, when you get to be a special guest, and I'm assuming that that's the first time you were a special guest at any convention. What were your
Yes.
expectations going into a convention like that and experiencing type of not just content creator, but just the hobby of like everything video game related?
I mean, going into it as a special guest, I was like completely shocked that I was able to become that. And Austin, the guy who runs Siege, awesome guy. I was currently going through some family stuff where, and something I discussed in my video called the Special Tribute for those who watch it. And I wasn't certain if I was going to be able to make the convention. And originally, I was supposed to do a panel alongside Retrowolf88, discussing about rare and odd GameCube items that no one really has ever seen or heard of. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it. And due to the timing of several things, I was able to go for that one day and let Austin know I was coming. And basically, you know, even though I didn't get to do the panel because of everything that was going on, and understandably so, because they didn't want to hold it in case I wasn't going to be there. It was amazing to still run into people who either didn't know I was going to show up. Like Eric and Jared had no idea I was going to still come to the convention because myself and them, we've all become good friends, great friends over this content creation. We contact each other on a daily basis. We're texting each other, all that, and it ended up being a surprise to them. I had to let Matt know that I was going to be coming to Siege still, and so we surprised them. And seeing their reaction was just really awesome. They were like really psyched to see me, and then running into just even there was a few fans of the channel that mentioned to me in a comment that they wanted to meet up with me, and I was able to run into them, which was really cool. Like it was just that moment of just it was a surreal moment, but it was just like I can't explain it. It was awesome yet surreal. I wish there was a better word for me to use other than those two combined.
Oh yeah, I can understand that.
And I think there was another question to go that went with that, right? It was as in terms of the retro games that were there or something like that.
Yes, as far as like everything hobby wise, like what would you like to look for whenever you go to a convention? I know that it's not just GameCube, but you could probably say like a toy from McDonald's or something that you would be interested in finding out in the wild.
More so now in the last couple of years, obviously GameCube games are what I've been going for.
Oh yes.
But also any GameCube oddities, things like promo items that have never been released, to the general public before, or, certain figures that I maybe never came across, or that I did come across back in the day that I never picked up, certain accessories, certain third-party items, anything GameCube related. So not just the games, but everything associated with it.
Oh
But
yeah.
the other thing I do love hunting at those conventions are Game Boy games, believe it or not. I do. I have very, very fond memories of my Game Boy Color and my Game Boy Advance, and trying to collect more of those games whenever I can. Certain games I missed back in the day is definitely a part of the hobby for me as well in terms of collecting.
Well, that's excellent. I know that some people usually look for the standees, and I think it was either Eric or Jared during, I want to say it was CorgsCon, and they pretty much got, I think it was the Persona 5 Rumble poster. It was like this giant GameStop one that I forget how much they spent on it. But is that something that you would like to be able to get a hold of one day, or is it just a matter of like the room that is just taking it up to be too much of a hassle for you?
I mean, as much as I love standees, yeah, space in the game room is always limited, right? Unless I had
Oh
an
yeah.
entire floor for just that. um, if I were to come across something GameCube related, maybe like a Resident Evil 4 standee, I think
Oh,
that I
nice.
would try to get.
Yeah, that's honestly one of my favorite GameCube games for the system, and before it got brought over to other consoles, it was like possibly at the time the best GameCube exclusive. Because I think it came out in 2005, or it was like right before the Wii got announced, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was January of '05 that Resident Evil 4 released on the GameCube, and remained exclusive on the GameCube until October of 2005.
Excellent. You've
Um,
got your statistics down. That's what I like to see is people who actually know about their history down pat, because that's how it is with me sometimes whenever I work on videos for the Uncommon Valley, is that you have to do so much research that when you try to remember it when you're recording audio, that it just becomes natural. Is that the same for you sometimes?
it is. It very much is.
Okay. And that transitions it over. I thought you were going to say something else. Sorry about that.
No,
Um,
no, that's okay.
So, anyways, since we're talking about content creation, we're finally on there. Let's talk about the channel. And you've been doing this since 2021, probably around the same time that I started getting back into video content making again. What about the GameCube to you attracted you to make videos on it exclusively?
So the GameCube is a console that's always been near and dear to me. During the sixth generation, my older brother had a PS2, and I ended up getting the GameCube since that was the console I wanted to get since he already had a PlayStation 2 in the household.
Mhm.
And getting it on Christmas of 2001 is a Christmas I'll never forget. And fortunately, I was even able to convert some of that video footage for a video to show when I got it on that Christmas.
Oh, nice.
And it's actually in one of my videos on the channel. I think it's the 1,000 subscriber special. It's mentioned in there, and or shown rather.
Mhm.
But the GameCube was now my console. It was my first home console that actually was mine. So getting the games was all me. And throughout the years, whether it was gaming with friends, all the countless memories playing the GameCube with my friends, or just all the exclusives that stood out for me. I mean, during the sixth generation, it was a time where I was in eighth grade when it came out. Everybody was talking about the PS2 and the Xbox because they either wanted Metal Gear Solid 2 or GTA 3 or
Mhm.
whatever more mature titles they were getting. And then everybody was talking about Halo and the Xbox. And here I was going like, yeah, well, I'm getting the GameCube. And people would be like, why are you getting that kiddie console? But meanwhile, I'd be like, because of things like Resident Evil Remake, which is not coming to any other console, like you, or like Eternal Darkness, or later
Mhm.
down the line, you had Resident Evil Zero, and obviously Resident Evil 4 towards the end, and F Zero GX, and so many countless exclusives that stand out for me. So when I was working on my previous channel, I had received a review unit for the Eon GCHD adapter. And when I covered that, that was the moment where I realized there is not a dedicated channel covering the GameCube and doing high quality content
Mhm.
about the console and its library. And I've been a huge fan of other retro channels, something like GameSack, for example, that really gave me the inspiration to create a channel about the GameCube and that level of quality, or at least somewhat similar to that level of quality,
Mhm.
and try to do the console justice. And I knew that with the console reaching its 20th anniversary, it was basically on the border of being called a retro.
Hmm.
So I decided with the timing of everything that there was no better time for me to launch a channel than when I launched it in April of 2021, covering the GameCube. And I was just excited. I was really excited about launching this because it was a console that was already near and dear to me. So my thing was I wanted to try to basically have viewers relive their nostalgia of this console, as well as newcomers who are just getting into the GameCube scene in the last couple of years because it's become a cult classic console. It's become a much sought after retro gaming console, and its library, as much as it's gone up in price,
Mhm.
is a pretty nice, vast library of titles that people want to experience.
Exactly. And that's the other thing I wanted to cover over right quick is that you mentioned about Eternal Darkness, and I would honestly go as far as to say at least top five favorite survival horror or just horror themed video games. The atmosphere that that brought back in, I believe that was 2002, to me, there's nothing else that really compared because it tried to do something different. Like, it messed with your TV back in the day, and now it's like it's easy to spot, like, where, okay, it's not supposed to look like this normally for TVs. But yeah, it was like if you had a tube TV back then, you had to experience it. And that to me is still one of my favorites. But as far as like other games on the console, what would you say is another one of your personal favorites that you like to review sometime?
Definitely F-Zero GX is easily one of the games I've been wanting to review for a while. But
Wow.
I'm waiting. I'm trying to give it a little bit more time. I'm trying to get a little bit more people to get behind the channel because it's a review that when I do it, I want it to do well. Um, reviews they can be hit or miss. I've had reviews that have done very well in my perspective. Something like the Ninja Turtles game series. I've reviewed every Ninja Turtles game on the channel. Those have been doing very well thanks to also Shredder's Revenge being released and what was leading up to that. A lot of people were looking up Turtles games,
Oh yeah,
so
the
that worked out.
algorithm helps.
It did, yeah. In that case, it definitely did. And then something like Eternal Darkness, which I've reviewed and released on Halloween of last year, and that one it took some time to kind of get some traction, and that one was one I put probably the most time into in terms of a review to edit because every time I do a review for a game, I actually play it to its entirety again. Whether it's a game I've played already or something I haven't played fully yet, I do record the entire playthrough before I write up my review and I put it together. Eternal Darkness took time because I tried to capture a lot of the sanity variables
Oh yes.
and having those trigger. There was one in particular I was trying to trigger for hours and it never happened, and it was a shame. I really wanted to use it and never happened, which was when it erases your memory card.
Oh yeah, that one. I actually had to go back when we were doing the Halloween special, and it's strange that you said that you did that for your Halloween special because that was the first one that we did aside from Rule of Rose, and I actually had to borrow footage from the sanity meter stuff for that, and it was the blue screen for us. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, it was crazy to be able to see how many type of, I wouldn't say glitches, but it's just stuff to be in there where it's like it messes with you, but at the same time it's still playable. So that was one of the props that I give to the creators back then to make a game such as that, you know?
It was a game that was so ahead of its time, and I even stated this in my review. It's a one of a kind game. There is literally nothing else like it on the market. And this is also due, in fact, to Nintendo owning the rights for the Sanity system. And that's why we haven't seen that implementation in other games, is because Nintendo's holding on to the patent of that system.
Yeah,
And it's
and yeah. Oh, sorry, go right ahead.
no, no, it's okay. I was gonna say it's just a shame that Silicon Knights went under because I would have loved to have seen another Eternal Darkness, but they clearly had this vision for that game well over 20 years ago. And there are certain games that age okay. There are certain games that kind of age like milk, which obviously is not a good thing.
Oh yeah.
But there are games that age like fine wine, and Eternal Darkness is one of those games that just aged gracefully.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Since you mentioned about Silicon Knights, I think it was like around the last decade, they tried to do a Kickstarter, or it was an Indiegogo to get a potential spiritual sequel, and that was back when a lot of producers or game developers from like old companies were doing these things. Had it actually had more traction and more media appearances to be able to get the word out about it, would there have been a sequel to the Eternal Darkness series?
I think if it gained the traction it needed and it did well, I could see Nintendo working with them and saying like, "Hey, why don't you guys go ahead and let's greenlight Eternal Darkness 2? Clearly, there's a market for this right now, so let's capitalize on it." That Kickstarter for Shadow of the Eternals was one that I was excited for. but everybody decided to basically back Mighty Number Nine, which we all
Oh
know how that
yeah.
turned out. So that was at a time where everybody basically just said, "Shut up and take my wallet" for Mighty Number Nine, and Shadow of the Eternals just sat there. And I was one of those that was like, "This is the game we should be backing, not this."
And,
Yeah,
yeah. The other thing I was gonna ask you, since you mentioned about that, I I'm pretty sure that it was because there were a lot more people who were desperate for a brand new Mega Man game. Because I think at the time it was Capcom that was like struggling to put new Mega Man stuff out. Do you think that that's because of the reason why, or is it because that something like Eternal Darkness was a bit too much of an obscure property?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Hmm.
Mighty Number Nine was coming out at a time where, like you said, a lot of these original creators were coming about, whether it was something like that or Koji Igarashi releasing a Kickstarter for Bloodstains.
Hmm.
People were yearning for some of those games that they grew up with because the market was starting to become stagnant. It was at a point where a lot of games were either first-person shooters or these like grayish toned, gritty looking games. And while you had indies that were trying to kind of capitalize on the older generation of games,
Hmm.
Mighty Number Nine was brilliant because it did come out and it was trying to capitalize on a time when it was needed for something like that. Just the execution of it fell flat, and it was a shame. But I do think that if Shadow of the Eternals, for example, was given another shot at a Kickstarter today, that would be fully funded in 24 hours.
And hopefully, if the creators ever decide to, I would love to see them be able to finish that and get it out into people's hands. Because the footage that they showed, it was like a small prototype. And from the footage that they had shown, looked good. But yeah, it's sad that it never got to get fully funded. So hopefully, if they decide to try their hand at it one more time, they could hopefully get it out to the people.
Yeah, I would hope so because I would definitely back that in an instant.
On the topic of content creation, as far as like a game that is on that console that you want to strangle so bad that to the point of it never existing in the history of the GameCube's release, what title is it and why do you think it needs to never be around anymore?
Trigger Man.
Which one was it?
Trigger Man.
Trigger Man.
One of the most asinine games I've ever played.
Oh wow.
Everybody will say Aquaman, people will say Charlie's Angels, and I'm not going to give them a pass. But Trigger Man is like the bottom of the barrel, pure garbage of a game for the GameCube that I have no words. Honestly, even I did a video called Top 10 Worst Looking GameCube Games. And I think that's still my shortest segment of a game to cover because I really was at a loss of words. I didn't know what else to say about that turd of a game.
Okay.
But a game
Oh,
but a
sorry,
game
go
that
ahead.
has frustrated no, that's okay. But a game that has frustrated me to no end that I would strangle is Spirits and Spells.
Oh, really?
So another one that I reviewed during October. During October, I did all these like Halloween themed type of games. I did a new review every week for that month. Spirits and Spells is one that I had never played, and I'm like, it looks like a fun platformer. This should be kind of like mindless, quick to play, quick to beat, no problem. I have never gotten so infuriated throughout all of 2021 playing a game until that game. And there were many times where I'm like, I'm just going to not review this. I'm just not going to finish it because of just how broken some of the mechanics were.
I guess the only other thing that I was gonna ask about your channel is, like, if you could do other video stuff, is there a potential system that you would want to get into? I know that you did Game Boy Advance top 10 stuff back in the day, but would that be some other video game stuff in mind, or are you just gonna stick to GameCube only for the time being?
For the time being, I am focusing on the GameCube, but one avenue, and you mentioned it before about how I did a top video for Game Boy Advance games for its 25th anniversary, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. So, and I'm going to announce this here. Actually, this will be the first time I'm announcing this. One of the video ideas I'm going to be working on is going to be my top 10 personal favorite Game Boy/Game Boy Color games. And thanks to the Game Boy player on the GameCube, that's kind of been my loophole to wanting to cover some of those kind of games. So it gives me a whole nother avenue to eventually explore and dive into. And I won't go too heavy into it, but it gives me at least a chance to change it up just a little bit. But if there was another console I would have done, I mean, the GameCube Galaxy is just going to be about that. But another console I would love to have covered would be the PS3, believe it or not, which is like that library all back there,
Oh yeah, right next to your GameCube shelf.
right next to that GameCube shelf.
That's gonna be the main focus of it. Is like whenever there's like the word GameCube pops up, it's like the chair goes over to the side and it's like GameCube. Okay, well, since I'm bringing up the name GameCube again, there was one other thing I was going to ask you about your content. With every system that is out, there's always going to be that one holy grail, that one rare item that many people look to as like, oh yeah, that is the reason to get the GameCube in the first place, but it's so hard to obtain. What to you, as far as a game that is on that system, would you say is your holy grail, or is one that you would love to be able to get on the or your content, but it's hard to be able to attain?
I will say one of my holy grail items for the GameCube that I've just acquired recently for significantly lower than what it goes for. Complete in box is Lost Kingdoms 2.
Oh wow!
Um, yeah, I was pretty stoked to get that for about 20% of what it costs.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
That's incredible. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that was a convention that you got it at, or was it a friend's that you got it from?
It was an online deal on
Oh,
eBay.
wow.
But yeah, yeah.
That's awesome because I know that hearing stories of people being able to find good deals whenever it comes to a convention or it's someone who's online, what to you is like one of the things you look out for as far as like a deal is concerned? Is it mostly just the condition, or is it the factor of it being at the right place at the right time?
I think that's actually interesting. It's a little bit of both. I do look at the condition. It has to be complete in box. That's my biggest thing. But for me, complete in box means it doesn't need like the Nintendo GameCube operations manual that came with every game. For me, just give me the case, the cover art, the booklet, the disc. Make sure it's clean. No stickers on there. No, it didn't come from a home that was a smoker's home. Because I have a game that smells like smoke, and I've kept it in packaging just because of how awful that smells. And I'm
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to figure out how to get rid of that. um, the condition's a big thing, and then going to a convention or a retro store, trying to find that sweet price point. I have an app where I keep a catalog of everything in my library, and it's tied in with price charting, so I could see the given the rough estimate of what things are going for the day of. And granted, that's a give or take because obviously that fluctuates, and it's got to be worth that value, if not less. Preferably a little bit less if you could work out a deal.
That was the other thing I was going to ask is like, I know that a lot of people, including myself, usually do use price charting. When it comes to giving like trade credit or something like trade bait to be able to get something that you're looking for, is it justified that some people aren't comfortable with price charting, or is it just a extra resource that's on hand to be able to use that for the trade?
I think it's an extra resource, but I could see why some might not want to use that. At the end of the day, I mean, games have gone up in value the last couple of years, right? Since GameCube, especially since probably about 2016. And then skyrocketed when COVID started, but so did
Oh
every
yeah.
other retro gaming platform. And just to kind of see where a game's current value is roughly at, to me, it should really be more about what is the value of that game to you as a buyer and a seller. I think that's what it should really boil down to. Because, listen, I grew up back in the day where you would trade your games with friends, or, like actually a buddy of mine gave me his copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the PS2 for nothing.
Oh
Just
wow.
gave it to me. Or actually, and that same friend gave me Time Splitters Future Perfect for the GameCube for nothing. Um, and remember there was a time when I remember buying Tony Hawk's Underground for the GameCube for $5 when it was still going for like $40 used in stores. And this kid, one of these guys in high school, just sold it to me for $5. And again, I guess that was the value of the game to him, right? Like there was no price charting back then. There wasn't anything to compare it by, other than what is it going for at EB Games.
Or the trade
So yeah,
amount, at least.
or the trade amount, yeah.
There are times where I've had games that would end up going missing. I know that there was like a copy of Smash Bros. And then there was a basketball game, and then Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. And those were like some of the few GameCube games that got me started on my GameCube collection, aside from, I think it was Bloody Roar Primal Fury, and that's like one of my favorite
Nice.
fighting games that I had ever played when I was a kid. And I know that Kronos is like one of the hardest bosses in the game to play, because he's like a penguin, and then he transforms into this like human hybrid phoenix that is like kills you in like one shot, but when you unlock him, is so cool. But yeah, I remember that my brother ended up letting him borrow my games without me knowing, and then next thing I know, I only get back the basketball game, and that was the one thing that frustrated me. So yeah, it sucks for anybody that has to have a family member not care about your own stuff, and then you have to like go back and just try to recollect this stuff over years.
Especially Bloody Roar. That's a game that's not that it's super expensive, but it has gone up in price.
Oh yes, it has. But anybody that's never played a Bloody Roar game before, on the GameCube controller, because of the analog sticks, is that it's probably one of my favorite fighting games that are out there, and it's one that I wish that they would have a sequel of it, but who knows? Maybe Konami, since they own the Hudson Soft rights, that they'll be able to pump some of those games out.
That, or if Nintendo wants to do a GameCube Switch app, and add that as one of the games on the library to play.
Yeah, because I think they have Adventure Island, or it was like some of the other Hudson Soft titles, if I remember correctly.
Adventure Island, Bomberman. I want to say Mylon's Secret Castle for the NES for some reason.
Oh,
I know that's Hudson
God.
Soft, but it's an awful game. I love how that came to mind already for me.
I think that's one that a lot of people would never have in their top 10, no matter what the
No.
case.
No, definitely not. And if
Oh.
they do, more power to them.
Yeah, more power to Nintendo and whoever they get the licenses out from. So, since we're on the topic of the channel, where do you see yourself for the rest of this year, or hopefully somewhere into 2023 and beyond?
I mean, honestly, it's just about putting out the content for everybody to watch, mixing it up with topic-based videos and a few reviews here and there. In terms of subscriber base, I mean, the channel is just shy of 2,500 subscribers, which is mind-blowing to me. It's just, again, I've been so humbled by the support from the community, and I always continue to be, no question about it. So, I mean, my goal at the end of this year was to maybe hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it's already surpassed that, and I'm like just floored.
Yeah.
In terms of content, it's just I really want to just keep pushing out all the different video ideas I've got for the channel, covering a variety of topics. Like I said, I want to do a Game Boy episode covering some of my top 10 favorites, which will definitely not include usual top 10 Game Boy games. So I think that'll keep it interesting. But I'm looking forward to doing actually an episode covering more exclusives in Europe and more exclusives in Japan. I'm actually working on an episode right now covering games that were exclusive to North America, because a lot of the viewers are actually out in the UK.
Oh, wow.
So I think it'd be really cool for them to see what we got exclusively that they might not even realize was exclusive for us.
That's the other thing I was going to say, is that it's cool to be able to see that when your channel grows, that you get fans that are from around the world. Because I remember there was a convention that I went to, and when I did interviews with like online parody creators, that there was somebody that was from Australia when we were going to this one convention called OhioCon, and this was back in 2011, and they pretty much shook my hand and was like, yeah, I watch your videos almost all the time. And they gave me like a little, I don't have it on me at the moment, but it's like a little panda little thing that clips onto your pen or pencil, and it's one of those experiences to be able to, like you said, be able to meet fans of your content that you never get to think about until it's like right there in front of you. And I'm guessing that for you as well, to be able to see a lot of those people watching your videos around the world is quite the experience to have.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. Just I've got there's one channel, Video Games Fun. He used to he used to do content. I don't know if he still does anymore. I think he might be taking a break, but he's out in Australia. He was an early fan of the channel, and I have another friend of mine, How to Game Differently. He's out in the UK, very much a fan of the channel, and it was just cool getting to talk to people from other countries and other regions and share those GameCube experiences. It's cool hearing what they played, and some of the games might not even have been games that came out here in North America, and vice versa. And that's just a small fragment or a part of the excitement behind the channel, is being able to reach out or have the community reach out together to hear and share these GameCube gaming experiences that they had, whether it was 20 years ago or if it was 5 years ago or 5 days ago.
It seems like we covered over about a good chunk of the comments that are questions, I should say, that we were going to have for this. But it was kind of going to lean originally to being a short recording, and we were going to check back with you at a later date. But before we got to the recording today, that I was watching one of your videos, and the one thing that surprised me is that it's an old acquaintance of not just yours, but also to mine. I just want to talk about Nick for a bit, and this may take up a good chunk, because I've got memories about that guy. Now, when you were talking to me before we got to start recording for this whole podcast, where exactly did you two meet up for the first time? Was it just a school, or was it just from like a work acquaintance?
So me and Nick, we became friends back in high school. It was ninth grade. I remember we were both in the same English class. I picked a chair. He sat right behind me. Didn't know who he was, and we had to go to this this orientation for high school. So we're sitting in the auditorium, but as we're walking there, we're talking, and he's like, "Oh, you like cars?" I'm like, "Yeah, cars are cool." We're trying to find a common ground.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, it's the guy thing, right? Like, let's talk about cars. That's usually a safe bet." And then, and then we got into the topic of, I think it was GTA Vice City coming out. And then that was it. It just took off.
Wow.
And actually, Nick, if you watch this, correct me if I'm wrong, if that was the game or not. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I think that was it. So we started just talking about games from there on out. He was looking into getting a GameCube at the time because he wanted to get Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and I was telling him all about that game. And then from there, it just kind of like we became really good friends. Honestly, he's been one of my best friends for years. We still talk all the time. As you just saw, I was up in New York and able to hang out with him for a bit, and we came across that pretty awesome find. And then even last year he visited me. We were able to do a video on the channel where we did a commentary of playing Shrek Extra Large in the GameCube, which is probably the funniest video on the channel, hands down, thanks to him. And
yes, that's right.
And like you said, you know him from the abridged community. So if you've seen his content like None Piece or Code Ment,
yes,
you know how he is, and it's always a hysterical time no matter what.
That's the other thing that I wanted to get into, because when I first met him, it was only through Skype, and that's going to be archaic nowadays for people who have never known what the hell a Skype is. But when I was in the abridged community back in the day, that we had that to use for communication. It was never Facebook. Only sometimes there would be Facebook fan pages, but when I made TAC as a YouTube channel, which morphed into a web forums and website, I forget how it is I got a hold of him, but there was like somebody that was able to talk to him, and then I was like, would you be willing to do an interview? And we did that, and I think it's in 2 parts, or it's like a 20-minute recording. But this was back when I had no interview skills whatsoever, and I would just have the same list of questions over and over. But out of like the most genuine people that we've had recorded with before, I would, yeah, Purpleeyeswtf is without a doubt one of the nicest guys that we ever talked to. And when the moment came where he got his own meme, and I know which one you're like thinking of, where it's the there's just soup. That's the
Yes,
one that I was shocked that that blew up so much.
I think he was too.
So like for his reaction, which we'll probably ask him if we ever decide to do a follow-up recording with him, what was your personal reaction when that actually happened?
Honestly, as I was somewhat surprised, yet not surprised. And the reason why I say I wasn't terribly surprised is because he's just a naturally funny guy. And throughout high school, I remember me and my friends would say, like, he would definitely be a fantastic comedian. He's just on point. His timing, because comedy is all about timing and just randomness within the timing. That was him 24/7. So there were times I'm like, this guy is going to take off. He's going to do so well in the sense of being a comedian or something entertainment wise. And seeing his content take off in the years prior when he was making this content, it was all, justifiable and rightfully so. I was so stoked for him because now he was a point where, one of my best friends was making content that people could see just how funny he was. But at the end of the day, he was just doing it to have fun with it. That's all he was doing. But it was surreal seeing that it's just soup became a meme, and I'm like, dude, that is awesome. Like, that is really awesome, and I was proud of him for that.
And you know that you've made it as a internet meme sensation when somebody actually uses Source Filmmaker and Team Fortress 2, because I know that that's like the iteration of that I know a lot of people recognize more often than just the Code Mint, there's just soup little edit. So it was crazy to be able to look back at that and see that it's like it's gonna be there for like the annals of time for internet history-ness, or however you want to go about it.
I thought it blew my mind because when you commented on my latest video stating that, I had to like read that twice because I'm like, really? Like, it showed how small a world it is out there.
It surely is, because like I said, it's just when he was in your video that I didn't think much about it until I started hearing the voice, and it's like, holy crap, that is the same Purpleeyeswtf that I knew back then.
Yeah, he always will be the same, and that's a good thing because people like that make you laugh, and you need laughter in today's times more than ever.
And honestly, if there's ever a chance for me, excuse me, for me to be able to like meet up with him in person, because there's always people that you get to know online, but you never get the chance to be able to just like give them a handshake, a hug, or just like go get a burger or something like that. So if it happens, I mean, it would be awesome to be able to catch up with him. But I think right after I took that comment down, that I just like texted him on Facebook. So it's good that he's doing good with his thing. I know he could have taken the internet stuff far, but to him, he's doing the right thing, and that's just focusing on his family. So I'm proud of Nick if he's ever watching this.
Yeah, no, he's definitely focusing on his family. Like, it's funny, we're both at that stage. We're like, we were hanging out, and I told him a couple weeks ago when we were right after we videoed, like, my daughter was playing with his kids, and I was just like, this is crazy. Like, we've reached this point where we used to hang out in high school talking about games. Like, that's how we got to know each other. And here we are at the next stage of life where it's like, oh yeah, our kids are hanging out with each other. And it's a very surreal moment. But what was cool is, like, even though they're doing their own thing, here we were doing our own thing, still recording and being us. And I thought that was just awesome.
The recording has gone over smoothly, smoothingly, or however you want to go about it, but I think we're getting ready to do our final subject of the night, and that is the 5 count. So, this is our little highlight special bit where you get to bring up your 5 favorite content creators that either are well known, not so well known, or just a mix of the two. So, without further ado, just take it away and let people know who you like.
All right. So first one is going to be to someone who's basically my GameCube brother. I think he's called me that before, and that is Matt, aka Retrowolf88. He has been a supporter of my channel since my very first video that came out, and we've become such awesome friends throughout our content creation, and then just again chatting and getting to know each other, and finally hanging out at Siege. His content is fantastic. You know, he's trying to rebuild his entire GameCube collection again for the second time, and the way he's been doing it is like just mind blowing. So, and he's been cataloging everything. He's been recording the entire journey. So, you know, people definitely have to check out his channel if they haven't yet. He really, really does some fantastic content alongside his nephew Devin, who does just phenomenal editing work. The second channel that comes to mind for me right now is actually my good buddy Tiger Chainsaw. So Tiger Chainsaw has been doing this thing called the Tiger Chainsaw Show, which is a retro gaming Monday night talk show. And it's the thing that's out that you didn't realize you needed in your life. And then you watch it and you're like, this is what's been missing. So forget all the Tonight shows and all those late night shows on TV. Like, this is a real deal. This is phenomenal. He's working on a second season right now. And it basically is him interviewing a developer or someone involved with the game that he's reviewing for that episode.
Oh, wow.
And he also does like skits in between them based on the game. So, for example, I think he did an episode on Wave Race 64, and he interviewed the announcer from Wave Race 64. But he also does a skit with the announcer's voice doing like all the things that he would say in the game, which is hysterical. He even gets like musical guests at the end of the episodes. It's a very, very well put together show that I cannot recommend people check out enough. He definitely is a content creator that deserves a lot more of a subscriber base than he has. So definitely check him out. Next one is going to be my good buddies Eric and Jared over at Retro Gaming Pandemic.
Oh, yes.
Much like Matt, they are fantastic people, such good people to hang out with and talk to. You know, we all, like I said, we all get together and talk constantly on the phone, whether, you know, through text, just talk about games in general and like what we're currently playing, and, you know, maybe even showcasing a little bit of our content we're working on. But they've been also doing a fantastic job with their channel, releasing it about a year ago now. And their quality is fantastic. They really put a lot of love behind their videos, and it definitely shows.
Yes, definitely.
So the next channel I want to give a shout out to is a channel that's definitely on the bigger side, but it's one I mentioned earlier in this episode because it's been the biggest inspiration for me, and that one's GameSack.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, you know, GameSack is a channel that I binged every episode years ago, about 6 years ago when I came across their channel, and since then I've watched every episode, and they're the reason I think why I got so heavily invested into retro collecting as well. But seeing the level of quality they put behind their videos and the topics, and I know now it's just Joe that's doing it. It's their quality. The quality is just phenomenal, and it flows well. It really is a massive inspiration for my channel. So if people have not watched GameSack, I cannot recommend that one enough. And then the fifth one is I'm actually going to do a smaller channel again. I want to do at least one big channel, but I wanted to try to keep it with the smaller channels. Is my good buddy Lame Dad. My friend Dave, aka Lame Dad, the Retro Gamer, he's doing a channel where, again, covering retro games, but a variety of different retro games, from NES up to like the PS3, Xbox 360. You know, occasionally some of today's games, but a little bit more before that. But what I love about his videos is he's got this very unique flair. When it comes to reviewing a game, it's a matter of whether the game is going to survive a saw. Meaning, or the hashtag rather, is the saw is the law. So if a game is pretty much crap, he's taking the game and he's putting it on his in his garage and he's sawing it to pieces. And if it's not bad, if it scores just high enough, it survives by not getting sawed to pieces.
Oh, wow.
And when he started doing that, I told him, I'm like, dude, this is brilliant. I said, you're doing something that I haven't seen anybody do, which is basically destroy the game if it's crap. So definitely a really great channel. Definitely another one that could use a lot more subscribers than what he's at, because he does some great content and he's only gotten better over time.
That's good. So you pretty much named off 5 different content creators, and I think it went swimmingly. We've always tried to say the same words, but they go badly on the show. But big thank you for coming out for the recording. I know that it didn't go as long as we thought, or actually, I'm looking at it. We did about 53 minutes of this, so thank you very much for coming out. It was a pleasure to have you on, man.
For having me on. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to hopefully being on again in the near future.
I hope so. Well, since we're talking about future, right quick before we end it, any conventions that you have in mind that you want to go to, or is that something you're still getting the feeler out about right now?
So I do intend to go to Really Rad Weekend in Fort Walton Beach, Florida this November.
Oh, nice.
So I will most likely be out there. So anybody who's going to that, let me know. I'd be more than happy to hang out with you guys and meet up with all you guys.
There we go. As is stated, you're going to that one, and hopefully there will be some conventions in the future that we'll be able to meet up and, I don't know, try to see about going GameCube hunting if you haven't already collected everything for the system yet. But once again, Mr. GCG, I will get that down eventually, which I think I just did. Thank you very much again for coming on for the recording. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you again, Kevin.